Hello everyone, today we're taking a look at the URUAV UZ80. Comes in two varieties of the all-in-one board, which we've seen many times before. We got Fly Sky and FR Sky D8 mode works best. And speaking of the all-in-one flight controller, it is the Crazy Bee F4 Lite, which features a 5 amp ESC and an F4 flight controller with an OSD, of course. And it also has an integrated camera plug. Motors are branded URUAV UZ80 19,000 kV. On those motors are HQ 40mm bi-bladed props. It does not come assembled, you have to put it together, but no soldering is required. Also, this is an early production run. This is my rubber band down here. You may find smaller differences with yours. Mine with the rubber band weighs 20.5 grams. And it does come with a solid pin PH20 connector, which is the best type of PH20 connector. It doesn't come with any battery, so I flew it on this Nitro Nectar Gold 300 milliamp 1S battery, which brings the weight up to just under 29 grams. Also flew it on this G&B 600 milliamp 1S battery, which makes the weight 35.25 grams. And with a 450 milliamp 1S battery, it weighs just over 33.25 grams. Carbon fiber bottom plate is 1.5 millimeters thick, and on my calipers, I'm getting a little over 79 millimeters motor post to motor post. I'm going to show you two flights. Well, not full flights. One full flight that we've just taken off here. You probably noticed while we're sitting on the table, there's a fair bit of wind. 11 miles an hour is what the weatherman reports. Of course, down here amongst the trees and behind the houses and stuff, we have some calmer winds, but when I get up in the air, the winds do pick up. So, you know, yeah, can you fly it outside in wind? Yeah, it just depends on how much wind. But I started to talk about the flight. So the first flight that I'm going to show you is going to be about 2 minutes and 30 seconds. Again, it's on the Newbie Drone Nitro Nectar Gold 300 milliamp 1S battery. And I'm going to show you the last minute of a 600 milliamp battery. I did not spend a lot of time flying larger batteries, mainly because I felt like I was managing the battery. But if you fly differently than me and you're looking for more flight time, sure, you can fly bigger batteries. It feels different. Whether that's a 450 milliamp or a 520 or a 600. But I'm going to show you the last minute of about a minute of a 600 milliamp flight, which comes in at about 4 minutes and 44 seconds. On the Banggood website, they're reporting a lot more fly time than I'm getting. But, you know, fly time varies depending upon how you fly. You could hover something in place for probably a lot longer than you could even just slow cruise. I'm guessing on that. Never really tried that experiment, but so flight time varies a little bit. I'm going to get about 2 minutes and 30 seconds. So 1S micros have been kind of a recent craze. I shouldn't say craze. Sometimes we forget that there are a lot of people out there working on these things, and you know, they're doing their own iterations, but they're individuals. They're part of the hobbyist community, so they're not necessarily looking to make a profit or make a product. They're just designing something they want to fly and have fun with. But 1S microquads have been around for a while now, and now we're seeing them start to hit the commercial market, which is good for those people that would like to, you know, just buy something. This, again, is a kit. You do have to put the screws in. You do have to kind of hunker things down, and we'll take a quick look back at mine. There's no need for a build video or anything like that. You just plug in things and they should all work, and as long as you put things together right as far as your props and things of that nature, should work fine. I'm flying the tune that it came with, and I'll put a CLI dump in the video description along with the hex file that you'll need to flash. If you're having troubles flashing the hex file that I put in the video description, you will need to download an older configurator or go out and get eMove configurator and use that to flash the hex file that I have down there. You can see the flight's ended. We're a little over, or just about 2 minutes and 30 seconds, and our battery came up to 3.6 volts. This is going to be the last about minute of the 600 milliamp flights. I did two flights. I just picked one at random. Just so you can get an idea. At this point, you know, I've probably got 30 or 40 packs in it, and I suspect my props are a little bit banged up, so you might notice this flight isn't quite as smooth because, you know, most of my crashes were pretty minor, really. You know, I fly in the backyard almost exclusively, and so when I crash, if I don't hit something, you know, I'm just landing in the grass. Now, sometimes I do hit some of the objects in the house, in the backyard. Most of the time it's vegetation, but every once in a while I have a pretty big crash, and I'll show you my most major crash after we get past this little segment that I can just show you my flight. So you get a fix on flight time, flight style, weight. Maybe you're eyeballing this and you're picking up the differences, because I am not as aggressive, I think, with the more weighty battery. But again, that's up to you. You get to choose. Price on this currently listed at $95, but the price is always fluctuating, and we oftentimes see coupons as well. So we're going to wrap up that flight eventually. I have a hard time landing on the table. It's usually why I land on the ground, because I can see something with my camera angle. There we go. Finally on the table. Battery is going to come back up to 3.5 volts. So that's where I want to end my flights. So I mentioned during the flight footage about how these things have been around. Some of you that follow the channel, you'll know about the TKS, Kevin's design. This is going through some additional iteration. I showed it actually in the 3D printed version, which is freely available on Thingiverse. So maybe you would rather have something like this. You could buy this and then transition everything over there, and it will work out for you just fine. I haven't done it myself, but of course, you know, these parts are all kind of the same. Everything's the same screw hole pattern and everything like that. So the TKS, the 2S version that I'm working on, which is sitting just off camera over here, we're iterating the frame a little bit more there to make sure it's durable, but the 1S version should be fine. And then, of course, it also harkens back to the Newbie drone Mosquito, which is very, very similar to the UZ80. So these things have been around for a little while, but I think some people enjoy just picking up a bind and fly, and in this case, here we go. So it's got the typical components that we always see. We've got the Runcam Nano 3. I think I failed to mention that in the quick specs with the V2 lens. This might even be a V3 lens at this point, but you got to see the image. You have to judge that for yourself. The rubber band, as I mentioned in the quick specs, I'm a little bit concerned that, you know, I guess not concerned. I just don't know what you're going to get. Mine didn't come with the rubber band. Again, this is very early production, so I don't know what they're going to use. But I just used the little square pattern, and I toilet tank my battery through here, plug it in, easy peasy. Still have access to the USB port. You know, there's not a lot of frame here. Matter of fact, if I recall correctly, that looks a lot like the HX100 from Beta FPV. Didn't they do cuts like this? Anyways, so as far as the assembly goes, you notice, hopefully, let me zoom in. So we've got one of the nylon screws down here right above the carbon fiber, and then we have the short standoff. All the standoffs are the same size. And then we put our canopy down, and then we put another nylon standoff on top. The canopy doesn't screw mount like the Newbie drone B-Brain canopy does. This one needs a nut on top, so something to keep in mind with that. But that's pretty much the assembly on all four parts. Of course, you've got screws that you have to put in on all your four motors. Not a big deal. Thread them right in. Get yourself a small little screwdriver. Your kit will probably come with a screwdriver. This is the position I use my antennas, and I've noticed on a few of these boards I've ordered that this antenna can come in various lengths. So if yours is different, it's not necessarily a concern, but I've noticed on some of the boards that I've been buying, because I build so many of these things, and I crash them and fly them, and I give them away and do all those things. So your antenna might be shorter. I've seen a few shorter antennas coming out. This antenna is pretty standard. I just put it right here so that it doesn't flop around and possibly get into our prop. Minor thing, you can see we do have a little bit of camera protection, even with that super wide field of view on that camera. So the camera is sunken back there a little bit, so if you dead on a tree, and that should hit right there. We'll play my most dramatic crash right up here, because I think that's important to show you. I just wanged into the tree and it fell to the ground. No big deal. The frame, it's pretty flexible. You know, it's only 1.5 millimeter. There's only so much power you can get out of 1S, so I don't know. Held up for me. Should hold up for you if you fly over concrete, or if you wang into a pole or something to go in plaid. Maybe not, but yeah, it flies pretty well. I do wish, what I would do, one thing I would do, I'm always concerned about this, run a little zip tie around here instead of just my rubber band like I've got. That will help making sure you don't pull the battery lead off of the battery pads on the board, because if you pull those off, you know, you just got a trace left. That can be quite difficult. Of course, you could always upgrade this thing or transition it, like I said, over to a TKS frame available at jax3dprinting.com or the Newbie drone Mosquito if you choose to go that route. If your frames do break and you're in the US, I know for international friends, getting some of those things can be more difficult. It's a good thing that they use solid pin PH2.0 connectors. As I said, that's the best possible connector that you can have for PH2.0. You can always transition that over to a G&B 27 connector, which is this little guy over here. Let me get that to focus a little bit. That connector's been around for a while. I don't have handy a BT20 from Beta FPV, but you could also transition it there. Probably get a little bit more flight time, a little bit more power, a little bit more excitement if you chose to go one of those other routes, because they're able to carry more working current. The last thing I think I should say is, see how my wires here are kind of underneath the antenna? I tend to use this wire antenna to hold these wires down. I didn't do a great job in this particular case. There doesn't seem to be enough length to where the wires can get out into the prop, but if you find that the length of wire you've got going to your camera is different, that might be something that you want to be careful about. Tuck that underneath the wire and kind of press the wire down so that it holds those in place. I was talking about the frame here a moment ago, and I kind of forgot to include one thing that I have never seen before in any sort of frame. This thing will bend and hold its shape. Watch. I didn't do it very well. Let me try again. See how it's now curved up? It's slowly coming down. But I noticed early on when I had it sitting here on my table or on my desk, I was actually going through the process of, configuring my modes and setting up the beta flight on it for my, specific needs. And I noticed that, these arms will hold their shape a little bit when it comes to bending. So if you crash, give the carbon a little bit of a look over too to make sure, all the motors are nice and flat. Something else that I should have mentioned earlier is that, these props being up so high, that's not ideal. The further down you can get the prop, which these aren't drilled through, so that's a downside to it. You can drill them through with like a 0.94 or 0.95 drill bit. TinyWhoop.com sells them. You can probably find them eBay and other places. So if you can get those all the way down to the hub, that will protect the motor shaft from being damaged or bent or even broken off. With the props clear up here, and I flew it just like it came here, and with the props being all the way up here, there's a lot of leverage. Now, the other side of this is that they're bi-bladed props. So tri-bladed props tend to stop cold because they have 2 points on the object that you're hitting, and then the shaft takes an impact, whereas this is unlikely or nearly impossible to have 2 points that connect. But still, if you come in and you hit a tree right up here, it could glance off and be fine. But we don't have, I think, in my opinion, the seriousness when you have bi-blades of, taking motor shaft damage. But in the best case scenario, look for like a 0.94 or 0.95 a drill bit to drill these all the way out and then push those props down. But I have never seen carbon that does that bending, and you can barely see the weave on the carbon. Hopefully that comes through in video. That's not necessarily important to me, but it is to other people. I know a lot of people are like, it has to be cut in a certain way. My understanding of carbon is that what we're looking at is just, it's like wallpaper. If I'm completely wrong on that, I would be surprised, but I'm prone to be wrong from time to time. Just ask my wife. I always cover the screws, but it's pretty typical for these that you'll find Phillips screws on the motors, and then you'll find hex screws nearly everywhere else. In this case, we also have some nuts, and then we've got another Phillips screw right up here to adjust our camera angle. But that was the last point I had for you about this particular frame. I have never seen that before. If you've seen it before, please let me know. Links are down in the video description if you care to check them out. Again, it comes in about $95. It's currently only got 2 protocol versions, Fly Sky and FR Sky. If you have any comments, questions, suggestions, or otherwise, please let me know in the section down below. I appreciate your time, and thanks for watching.